Welcome into episode 572 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Today we have a full mailbag episode, and we hope to get to as many as we can. You guys sent in a lot, and honestly, we were texting yesterday, Bridget and Scott. Hats off to all of you because very, very well thought out questions, and we appreciate that. So we're going to get into all of it. But Bridget and Scott, how are you two doing today?
I'm not good, honestly. I think I got to stop going to sporting events. I went to the Revolution game Wednesday night. They lost. Every team I go see for the local teams loses now. I figured it out. I have a 6-game personal losing streak going on right now. So the Bruins 3 home playoff games. Went to a Red Sox game. They lost, of course, because they suck. I went to one of the Fleet playoff games. They lost. And now the Revs last night. So I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm a curse or if it's just all the Boston teams in general suck right now, but it's not good.
So your last win that you were at was Game 2 in Buffalo, right?
It was 84 years ago.
Yeah.
Last win at home, last win in Boston would have been the regular season finale, I think.
Yeah. It's been a while.
Yeah, that was like a lifetime ago.
It's because he spent all of his, his karma on trying to get those predictions that, he loves his predictions. And I don't think they particularly went well. And, the win streak has gone away, or the losing streak has taken over.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna choose to not blame Scott. I'm gonna say that the teams locally have sucked in the last month.
Yeah, I was gonna say what's the Celtics' excuse? I didn't go to any of their games; they kept losing too.
Exactly. So as I said,
I didn't go to Mike Vrabel's house; he's been losing.
I didn't know you were gonna go there that quick, but okay. Oh boy, were you the one that took the pictures, Scott? Let us get to the mailbag because, as I said at the top, there's a lot of them, and we appreciate them. We'll try to get to as many as we can. If we don't get to them today, we will get to them in ensuing episodes. So do not worry about that if you don't hear your question today.
Yeah, I think we had 3 episodes worth of questions, to be honest. Maybe more.
Yeah. So again, thanks to all of you for sending them in. Let's start off with Dylan. And Dylan asks a question about a topic we 3 have not touched on yet, which is Charlie McAvoy being suspended 6 games for his slash on Zach Benson. And Dylan asks, why is the Department of Player Safety so clueless? How can they suspend McAvoy for 6 games, in parentheses, which is probably fair? So I appreciate that Dylan gave that context, without giving Benson discipline for not even 1 game in playoffs, not to mention how they didn't give Vilmanis anything for elbowing a broken jawed McAvoy in the head, and many more inconsistencies. It also might be how do you say that kid's last name? Is it Vilmanis? I may have said it wrong, but
I think Vilmanis is right.
Okay. So in any event, Dylan's question, guys, your reaction to the Charlie McAvoy suspension and the lack thereof to Benson, which we've known all along.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part that gets me. And I think I said it right from the start, where I thought it should have been a game for Benson and then a few for McAvoy was how I saw it. So it ends up being 0 for Benson, not even a fine. And then 6 for McAvoy. It feels like that's too big of a discrepancy. That's how I felt from the start. It's how I feel now. Player safety in their video announcing the suspension calls Benson taking down McAvoy a dangerous trip. It's which first off, it's also a slew foot. Yes, it's a trip. It's also a slew foot. So if you're saying it's dangerous, why was there no supplemental discipline? That part still doesn't make sense to me, where it's so just because his team advanced on in the playoffs and you don't want to suspend a guy for a playoff game, I feel like that's honestly it. And then as it relates to McAvoy, 6 is probably, a couple games longer than I would have gone, but I don't really think you can complain too much. Everyone knows you cannot wind up and 2-hand slash a guy. it's gonna get you pumped. So, and McAvoy has a history. He's been suspended twice before, which is taken into account. I argued with a couple people on Twitter about this. Like, people, I think, misunderstand what repeat offender is because there's this language about like 18 months, like the last 18 months. That only applies to how much salary you can forfeit. It has no impact on the suspension. So his history, no matter how far back you go, that is taken into account. Player safety said as much. So that probably tacked on an extra game or two at the end.
Yeah, I think if it was in a vacuum and he hadn't, the history wasn't there, maybe he only gets maybe 2 to 4 games, or 2 to 5 games. But yeah, I think it was worth at least a bonus game there that they took into account. And to the Benson part, we would have known if he was getting disciplined right away because he didn't get an in-person hearing, so they would have given that out immediately before the Sabres' next playoff game. Obviously, we knew that he wasn't suspended, and he started that series against Montreal, so that was known. And I did think it was a really just stupid slew foot trip, like in a dangerous spot. And this is my issue with the Department of Player Safety. To get to that part of the question, I just think they're so inconsistent that's why it's always an argument, right? Like they don't make it easy on themselves to defend their decisions because they just lack consistency. And your name is the Department of Player Safety. Like, you should be enforcing things. You should be disciplining people based off of what's going to help get those kind of penalties out of the game that are dangerous. And I think I've mentioned this before. I think college hockey does it better. You see more suspensions. You see more 5-minute majors for hits up high, hits from behind, dangerous hits that they're trying to get out. And they're hoping to get out those kind of hits out of the players before they go to the pros so that it doesn't carry over there as well. But my issue is with them does come to consistency, because that hit from Vilmanis on McAvoy was certainly worth one game at the least. It seemed like that was textbook, but yet nothing from them. And I don't have an issue with them giving McAvoy 6 games. My issue with the Department of Player Safety is that I feel like they don't give out enough supplemental discipline. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I feel like there's so many more occasions where you have to send a message that this isn't acceptable, and instead it goes by and there's not enough of a repercussion for anyone to stop doing it. So actually, I had told myself that the next time I saw Gary Bettman, I was going to bring something up about it, but I didn't realize I was going to see Gary Bettman in Buffalo. And I kind of chickened out on asking him about it, which I'm still kind of mad at myself for. But I didn't have the wording of the question exactly how I would have liked it in the moment. And I was like, how was I going to word this? I would have loved to have asked him about that. I know he would have fired back at me and like been mad at me and, probably avoided the question in any way possible. But I think they should be handing out more suspensions, even if they're just 1 or 2 game suspensions, because it has to send a message.
Well, if you got mad at you for asking a question, just give him a little slew foot there, Bridget, I
was going to say, Bettman did comment on player safety this season after Connor McDavid complained about the inconsistency. And he said they're doing a great job. So nothing to see here. They're awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I was ready to challenge him on that, and then I didn't. I wish I had. Next time.
I think it's fair to say, and this probably goes for a lot of league commissioners, I don't think you're going to find many who openly disparage or criticize the league that they run. I think it's quite uncommon for that to be the case.
But you want to hear, like, if he does give that answer, like if he does give an answer that's good or bad, like people want to know like what the current thought is on certain things, and that's something that's important to fan bases everywhere, because I feel like every fan base this season can probably point to something that injured or nearly injured one of their favorite players and had no repercussions.
Yeah, definitely always ask the question for sure. You guys kind of hit this perfectly. The only thing I'll say is, because I do agree, and Bridget, to the 6 games to McAvoy, it was an egregious play. it was a boneheaded play, regardless of what happened before that set him off. You cannot do that and expect that you're not going to get, a pretty serious suspension. I would have rather seen him maybe try to drop the gloves or do something a little bit more than, use your stick as a weapon.
Yeah.
But whether it was 4 games, 5 games, 6 games, McAvoy deserved a long suspension, intermediate to long suspension for this. So whether or not Benson got suspended, right, like it does, like as it pertains to the Bruins, they're going to be without McAvoy for 6 games next year, whether Benson got 0 or Benson got 3 games, right? So, but as far as the process goes, it does seem a bit flawed that Benson didn't get anything. But as it pertains to the Bruins, immediate future next season, whether Benson got suspended or not, the Bruins have to deal with this, a 6-game suspension to one of their best players. So that would have happened regardless. And that's kind of how I'm choosing to look at it going forward, is whether Benson got suspended or not. Charlie was rightfully suspended. So, it is what it is. And the process, yeah, it's going to continue to be flawed. I just don't have the highest expectations.
Just to put up like a punctuation on my thoughts on it, the goal of the department should be to set an example with their discipline, right? Like to set an example of what's not acceptable. And obviously in this case, what's not acceptable is the 2-hand slash. And that's right. Perfectly well and good. Now maybe somebody else doesn't do it, but that should apply to setting examples in other ways, like hits to the head more consistently, and other things. Like set more examples, honestly, to help let players know what they should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think they need to have the difference between what you get when you cause an injury versus, that didn't result in an injury. I do think like there should be a difference. Like whether or not there's a serious injury should matter, but not as much as it does, because I guarantee you, if McAvoy hit the boards at an angle that broke his leg, I guarantee you Zach Benson's getting suspended. So, okay, maybe you don't suspend him as long because McAvoy was fine, but like that's still a play that could cause a serious injury that should be penalized, that should be disciplined, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And similarly, like if McAvoy had broken Benson's arm, you're probably looking at 15 games. Like then it becomes significantly longer.
So you're saying that they should put more emphasis on intent and less on results?
Yeah, and same thing like going back to the Vilmanis elbow. It's like, thank God McAvoy wasn't concussed or didn't re-break his jaw and miss the Olympics. But like that was still a play that could have caused that. And like, so there should be an element of like what could happen. Again, like to Bridget's point, if you're trying to limit plays that could cause serious injuries, then you do have to penalize them even when they don't actually cause that serious injury.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Dylan, thanks for the question. Hope we answered it to your liking. Joe asks the next question, and this is an interesting topic as well. And Joe says, even if Evan Gold doesn't get the job in Vancouver, Evan Gold, the Bruins assistant GM, I don't think that's great news for the Bruins. Gold and Jamie Langenbrunner clearly don't see a way up the management ladder in Boston, and I don't blame them. Jacobs seems to want Sweeney and Neely in there for a long time to come. Looking online, it seems that a lot of teams are now realizing Gold is willing to move and is a strong candidate. I wouldn't be surprised if another team grabs him. If not this offseason, then the next time a GM is given the axe. What are your thoughts on this situation? So, Bridget and Scott, the specifics of the Gold situation as it pertains to the rumors with Vancouver, but also we can kind of link this into some of the developmental problems we talked about last episode and what this could mean overall for personnel, because Joe asks a good question. If Langenbrunner and Gold are kind of mentally, I don't want to say checked out because that's not what I'm saying, but if they don't see the opportunity for internal growth for their personal careers, it's, of course, why wouldn't they be looking, okay, well then if not here, where?
Yeah, I guess I'm not as concerned about that. Like, I mean, if you want to say like you think the Bruins should fire Sweeney and promote one of those guys to general manager, like, like that's fine. That's a totally valid opinion. But the idea that like, oh, they don't see growth here, it's like, Well, yeah, I mean, they're currently assistant general manager, which, in the management ladder is the second highest position you can get. The only position higher is general manager. Your team has one. So, yeah, naturally, like, you're looking elsewhere. Like, that goes for anyone. If you're looking to advance your career, you're looking to move up. So, they've risen pretty high here. There's been a lot of growth for both of those guys. Langenbrunner was promoted. That was just within the last few years that he went from director of player development to assistant general manager. They created a second assistant GM spot for him. Evan Gold, within the last couple of years, got Providence Bruins GM added to his title. Don Sweeney used to do both. He was Boston GM and Providence GM. So they carved that out for him. So it's like they have found ways to promote those guys, give them more responsibility, more pay. But yeah, unless they're going to actually be the next GM and Sweeney gets fired, of course, eventually you top out and you have to look elsewhere. That's same thing if you're an assistant coach, right? Unless the head coach gets fired, your best opportunity to be a head coach is going to be to go elsewhere. So I don't really look at it as much of a bad thing so much as just this is natural progression of life and careers. Is like everyone's always looking to advance, as those guys should be.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in their jobs can relate. Like they maybe have one position ahead of them and they're like, well, that guy's not going anywhere or that girl's not going anywhere. So you got to go outside. And I do think just to give a little bit of background as well, like Evan Gold is a big part of their team. They're almost always together. I feel like I see Sweeney, Neely, and Evan together a lot. I also see him, when I went down to cover Hagens in Providence, he was there. He sat with all of us at practice, actually. And he's overseeing those practices, those games. Like he's got a lot of responsibilities, honestly. He has a lot of work that he's doing because I've seen him at college hockey games. He's pretty much everywhere, and he's a big part of development. So he's got eyes on pretty much the whole development pipeline. And so he is a big part of it, and I know that they're comfortable with him, hence the promotion. And it would be a big loss for him to leave. I think, notwithstanding like the fact that is such a goal of his, I'm sure, to move up from assistant to a real GM. I think he does actually like it in Boston. So obviously, if the opportunity arises, which he's been interviewing for, there's been a few opportunities this offseason. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody did pick him because he's had a lot of responsibilities put on his plate. He's never been a GM before, to my knowledge. Correct, Scott? So this would be his first go at it, but Toronto passed up on him and the fan base wasn't super happy with the choice they made instead. I think anybody who chooses him, like obviously the fan base is going to probably have to get to know him. And hopefully his experience in Boston for their sake when they're hiring him gives them enough to get over the hump. But I know that he's well liked here. So I know that the Bruins would rather not see him go.
So if he were to stay in Boston for next season, then my next question is kind of a moot point. But if there was some sort of movement this offseason for him to another organization, where would that leave the Bruins? I'm not saying that Gold and Langenbrunner are a package deal. Like they're two different individuals. So maybe Langenbrunner takes his spot. Like I don't really know, but like, do you think the Bruins have potential succession plans internally, or do you think they'd have to go outside the organization if and when one or both of those guys moved on?
Yeah, I think what would have been interesting is I think the Bruins were fully prepared and had a plan if one of them left and got a job elsewhere. The rumors that started coming out as it related to the Vancouver job was that not only would it be Gold going, but that he would take Jamie Langenbrunner with him in some capacity, as well as Jeremy Rogalski, who runs their analytics department. I don't know that the Bruins would have been prepared for that, for losing all three. Like, I think that would have caught them off guard because there's sort of like an I don't know if it's an unwritten rule, but like generally, like if you leave an organization take a job somewhere else. It's kind of like an unspoken agreement that like you don't raid your former organization. That would have been really fascinating, like how that would have played out if it was like, oh, all of a sudden, like, holy crap, 3 of our top executives just left. Then I think like you get kind of fair questions about like, all right, what's your plan now? Like, are you just promoting guys internally? Are you now looking to the outside because you don't have internal promotions that can fill all 3 spots? Like, that would have been really interesting. So obviously, didn't end up happening. Looks like the Canucks are going with Ryan Johnson, he was their assistant GM and AHL general manager. And the Sedin twins are going to be involved going forward in some role. It kind of seems like that turned into a pretty messy process too. From what I understand, I think Evan Gold was really close, and something happened that kind of fell apart towards the end. So, I'm sure that the full story there will get out at some point. But between Toronto and now Vancouver, some teams that have been pretty poorly run for a while now also seem to maybe be not running these searches very well.
All right, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll definitely keep an eye on it. It looks like the Bruins don't have to worry about that, at least right now. So moving on to the next question. This one is from Ian. And Ian says, how valuable would Morgan Geekie be in a hockey trade? For example, could Geekie be the centerpiece in a hypothetical deal for Jason Robertson? Could he go out with some firsts and or prospects? Dallas gets a cheaper winger who can score with some extra trade fodder in future picks. Is it crazy to prefer this over trading a Hagens / Letourneau? Bridget and Scott.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating idea. You can see the thinking there where, like, say Jason Robertson ends up at a price that Dallas can't afford because they are kind of up against it cap-wise. You know, would they consider a deal where they get back a cheaper but still fairly proven goal scorer? I mean, maybe. I would still say, like, if you're Dallas, James Hagens has way more value. Like, James Hagens' ceiling is much higher than Morgan Geekie. So, you know, can Geekie be the centerpiece of a deal? I guess that depends. I think you need other valuable assets in something like that. So whether it is first round picks or, you know, a Will Zellers or like something like that, like another kind of top, you know, upper tier prospect. But it's not a bad idea. Like, you could see how it would make sense, right? Where like the Bruins are getting an upgrade, so even though they really like Morgan Geekie, maybe they'd be willing to do it. Dallas says like, hey, we're in win now mode, you know, maybe they see some value in the proven player. I don't really see it happening, but it is a pretty interesting idea.
So also, I just want to give like the contract stipulations for Geekie. So this 2025-26 season, he had a no trade clause. 2027, 17-team no trade list. 2028, 12-team no trade list. 2029, 6-team no trade list. So obviously that means it puts the it puts it in Geekie's court on those trades because of the trade protection there. That's according to Spot Track, by the way, if Scott, you're looking for that. That is where I'm reading this from. But Morgan Geekie, as of
I think I think, trying to make sure I have this right, I believe his no trade clause doesn't kick in until July 1st. So you could do it before then and he would have no say.
Yes. Yeah. So he'd have no say right now, you're saying?
Correct.
This just says 2026, so I figured that meant this year. But maybe I'm wrong. So maybe that means 26-27 season. But I like the idea because that's a name that we have not brought up in any of our conversations about trades so far since the season ended, and we kind of got into it a little bit more. Probably because he's not the problem. Like he's maybe part of the solution, but he has been streaky. And you do wonder if he has more value than some of the other guys that we've been bringing up. I mean, he should. He's more of a goal scorer than some of the other guys. We brought up the names, Middlestat, Zaka, Lorai, and Geekie, I would say, has probably more value than at least two of those guys. Maybe Zaka and him are up there around the same kind of value. But yeah, I like the idea of bringing him up in it. And I guess the second part of the question was, would you guys prefer that over getting rid of a big prospect like Hagens, and then I guess throw Letourneau in there too? I think it'd be more palatable, honestly, but that's also what Scott was saying, makes it probably less valuable, right? You might have to add in more picks or maybe they wouldn't be interested at all. But Geekie isn't that old yet. I mean, he's going to be, to start next season, he's going to be 28 years old. So,
and what's Robertson, like 26?
Yeah.
I mean, in the situation that Ian presents to us, if that deal could be had, I would do it in a heartbeat. Like, if it was Geekie going out and a first couple of picks and a prospect that has value that's not Letourneau or Hagen, in a heartbeat. I don't, to the point Scott was kind of making, I think, Morgan Geekie is one of the top 5 goal scorers in the last 2 seasons, or calendar and a half, like in real time. Like, you would think that player would be the centerpiece of a deal, but yet there's hesitation in Scott's voice about, could he really be? And that's because Morgan's kind of a one-dimensional player. Like, that exposes right there why Morgan Geekie he's a good finisher. He can make some plays, but he's not this overall top end forward in the league that, some people have kind of made him out to be in terms of goal scoring, which give him credit, but there's a lot to be desired in Morgan's game sometimes.
You're getting the tweet this week. One dimensional, he's coming at you. Yeah, you're the one getting it this week.
Clip it.
You know what?
Geekie.
To be honest, if I'm being honest, I honestly don't think Morgan would disagree with me all that much. I think he'd probably sit there and say there's more to his game he could probably improve upon. So, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I think if you watch the player for the last couple of years, it's pretty fair to say he's, he can score when he gets the opportunity. He's a bit streaky. And when he's not going, he's not going. He's not really a playmaker. He's not really a one-on-one play driver. So what would you call that kind of player?
Yeah, I mean, Marco Sturmis said they need him to contribute more in other areas when he's not scoring. So, there's no, you're not going like really off the page there. Just for the record, like, since we're kind of talking about these different trade chips, if I'm the Bruins, I would rather trade Geekie than Hagens, but I would rather trade Letourneau than Geekie if I'm just ranking the pieces in my mind.
Can I add a name to that I'd rather trade before all of them if I had to? And it would probably be Zaka. And this is kind of, and when you say, a few minutes ago about like Geekie's trade protection and how much term he has left in his deal, that's why I know I said I would do this trade in a heartbeat, but theoretically, just in general, the reason why we haven't been talking about trading Geekie is because I think, he has term on his deal and he can be a part of your future. Zaka is a guy that I think he has limited term left on his deal. And I think he brings you a ton of trade value. And if you don't think he's part of your long-term future and he's an expiring contract, then can you capitalize on that? Whereas Geekie, his contract's not up at the end of next season. So I don't have those thoughts. Like, I think would you guys rather have for the next 7 years or so, would you rather have Morgan Geekie or Pavel Zaka? I'm just curious if you had to pick one.
Well, I mean, if you're taking the contract into account, then Geekie, because I already know he's on a really good contract like that.
Yeah, take it into account. Yeah.
Reflecting back to last offseason, like, we didn't know for sure that was going to be a really good contract. We didn't, there was a chance that last season, meaning the 24-25 season, maybe that was his career year. But then he was better this year. So now it looks like a really good contract at $5.5 million per year. Zacha is going to get, you got to figure like at least $7 a year at this point, right? Like 34-year-old Charlie Coyle just got $6 million a year. So taking that into account, yeah, probably Geekie.
Now, to add on to that, who do you think has the higher trade value for all things considered right now?
Geekie, because of that contract.
Okay. All right. So you think that'd still be Geekie? All right. Fair enough. I could see an argument for Zacha bringing back more to trade, given his position, his versatility, and still having 4.5 on his deal for next year. And in that situation, I could say, so you'd rather have Geekie long term, but Zacha has the biggest trade value. So that kind of proves the point of like, I think Zacha is the one that you get rid of. But if you think Geekie still has a better contract, then I guess my point kind of goes out the window a little bit.
Well,
yeah, I guess it would
better
depend
trade
on
asset.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would depend on the team and the situation, right? Because if someone's desperate for a center, then obviously they'd prefer Zacha.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're doing anything this year with a no trade, though. So that's where the conversation kind of stops.
No trade for who, Bridget?
For Geekie.
Oh yeah,
But if you do it before July 1, there's no protection
if it kicks in. And I will say to this trade hypothetical we were given, if Morgan were to waive to anybody, I think Dallas would be a team that like most players around the league would say, okay, I'll go live in Dallas. I don't want to move my family, but if okay, I'll go play with one of the best teams in the league on go live in Dallas, which it's a hell of a lot closer to Calgary, where Morgan lives in the offseason than Boston is. There's little things like that, but in any event, okay. Moving along.
Calgary.
What's that?
Is it closer? I mean, slightly maybe, but it's more south, and then you're.
Well, it's more west.
Now we have to do some math.
I mean, Texas is far more west than Dallas is far more west than Boston.
Yeah, but it's also way more south.
Yeah, I guess.
Neither are close. I'll just put it.
You know what, Bridget? I guess I wasn't expecting a follow up to that. You're not wrong.
Like, wait a minute. Since when is Texas close to Canada? But...
No, I'm not. I mean, we're talking Western Canada, so that's why. Boston is not close to Calgary. I have to feel like Dallas is closer, but maybe I'm wrong.
Which one's fewest?
Yeah, which one's fewest? So we have to get the flight duration here and the mileage while we're recording. I feel like it has to be Dallas closer, but anyway, let's move along here. In the meantime, let's go to Zach's question. Zach says, the player injury that worries me the most right now is Elias Lindholm. Zach, preach. Do you think it's possible that the Bruins could make a decision if they're going to put him on LTIR before training camp? I would hate to see Sturm settle on players' lines and then find out a month into the year that Lindholm is out for the rest of the season. Then you have to take time to move people around again, just as they found chemistry, or heaven forbid they traded Patra in the offseason because there was no room on the roster. And then you find out, you need to play him at center. Bridget and Scott, your thoughts on that question from Zach?
Well, yeah, I mean, like we kind of brought up the possibility of LTIR, but you can only do that if he's like legitimately injured and going to miss a significant amount of time, or if he has surgery at some point that's going to keep him out where, okay, this is a 6-month timeline. We're going to put him on LTIR. If he shows up to camp ready to go, like you can't just be like, hey, we're going to put you on LTIR anyways. It's like he would never go for that. The NHLPA would never go for that. You'd have a lawsuit on your hands. It'd be a whole mess. So, in theory, they should know, like, as training camp starts, whether or not Elias Lindholm is healthy or whether or not this is something that's going to force him to miss time. And, the concern is, like, most likely he shows up healthy, is ready to go. The concern is, like, when or if does it resurface again? Because this back thing is now popped up 2 years in a row, and I kind of feel like you're just going to be holding your breath for it to pop up again. But there's really nothing you can do about that in terms of like putting him on LTIR. It's like if he's healthy and he passes his physicals and he's on the ice, then he's on your team. And like you can't really get around that.
My thoughts are that, the LTIR thing completely depends on how, like, he would have to be injured more than he is now for them to do that. When I talked to him after the season, he had mentioned that, I mean, he played through it the whole year. So you don't, pretty much, besides he said the first, when the season started, not long after that, did he start feeling the effects of it again. Which means it is an injury that never put him on IR this year. So you have to presume, unless he were to take a hit at some point during the season that made it worse, he wouldn't be on IR, LTIR next year either. The problem is kind of the pain management portion of it that he has been getting treatment for, with getting some shots throughout the season. Obviously, in the offseason, he's going to look for other options for treatment and see if he can get it healed. But it's concerning, Zach. Yes, back injury that I think you can see has limited him compared to what he was a little bit earlier in his career. So the LTIR thing, though, I think you're not going to be able to do. And then I love how we always have Poitras mentioned in our mailbags, no matter what. And it gets to just like, he's a likable kid that people want to see succeed. So, yeah, like, you don't want to see the pipeline get slowed down by an injured center that's not giving you as much as you were hoping for. That's kind of the situation they're in, though.
Yeah, I think for Poitras, it's kind of, I hesitate to say now or never, because he's still so young. But I have to question, if he's not on a team next fall, like, what are you doing with the kid? Like, because I do think that you're going to get to the point, you may already be there if it's next year, where the AHL, the minors, is not going to be helping his development anymore, right? I mean, he's done all the right things down there for a little bit. His production has been inconsistent, but his details have been good. And the team could use, like, the Bruins could use his hockey IQ and his skill set. But if they're hell bent on him being a center iceman, which again, they kind of have a bit of a logjam right now. Matt has not shown a great ability to play the wing, but I don't know. The Lindholm situation, we all know, is a massive anchor. And I do think that at some point in time, LTIR is probably on the horizon for him. Whether or not it's to start next season, who knows? But yeah, it would suck to trade away a Poitras because you don't think there's a fit for him, and then Lindholm gets hurt and you can never play him again. So that would suck.
You're hoping that he doesn't need to be, meaning Lindholm, be on LTIR to start next season. You're hoping this offseason he's able to get right, guys? Like, that would be the ideal. Like, the ideal situation would be like he somehow finds a way to manage this better than he's like a treatment that works better. And, maybe he's dealing with no pain, hopefully. And maybe he's able to play more freely in a situation where he's not dealing with pain or stiffness or what have you. So I mean, that would be the ideal situation, because he is under contract and does have a no move clause. So you need him to get better and get right. And that would be the best case scenario.
You need him to be a completely different skater than he is. And so from a human perspective, Bridget, like, of course I don't want the guy to be,
well, maybe without pain,
I just, I see, like, the way the league is going. I mean, sure, but speed kills, and the Bruins just don't have enough speed up and down this lineup. So to be honest with you, like, from a human perspective, yes, like, I don't want Elias Lindholm to be sitting at home and back, none of that stuff.
Well, from a contract perspective too.
Yeah, but from a hockey perspective, do I think it's the worst thing in the world for the Bruins to free up some cap space and have some more speed in their lineup? Again, Lindholm's, he's only going to get older. He's in his early 30s, and with a back injury, I don't see this ending well. That's not a hot take to say that. We'll see. Back injuries don't just get better when you don't have the time to heal them.
Yeah, I mean, and from the cap perspective, it's also worth noting, like, you really only get that cap space if he's out for the entire season. So, like, now we're talking about, like, now you're talking about something like truly debilitating, if it's, or like a major surgery if it's costing him the entire year, right? Because even if it's like he's going to need 2 months and won't be ready. It's like, well, then you have to be cap compliant when he comes back anyway. So it's not like you just getting an extra $7.75 million to use.
Which, by the way, Sweeney, I just going to have to go by his word on this one. When asked about offseason surgeries, did not say Elias Lindholm was having one. In fact, he said nobody was having one, correct? So that would mean there's not like that as an option. Doesn't seem like it's happening. So, and a player's not going to sit themselves out for a whole season because their team said you got to sit. You know what I mean? Like that's just not how it works. So he's probably back next year from the start, and you just hope he's healthier.
Yeah, I think that's it, Bridget. I do think he's back to start next year, and you do have to hope he's healthier. But it's not a great situation. Quickly before we go to the next question, because I know everybody's dying to hear the results of Dallas and
Okay,
Boston
good.
gate. So Boston to Calgary is 2,579 miles. It's a 39-hour drive. Dallas to Calgary is 1,885 miles. It's a 29-hour drive. So it's 10 hours more to drive from Boston and like 700 miles more, something like that. So
I think he's probably got enough money to not have to drive it.
He's done that. He's done that drive a bunch though. That they're a big road trip family. Like I think he actually has made that drive every off season. I don't know if that's changed. Maybe the new contract now he's flying in luxury, but
first class now.
But I talked to him about that once. Like he did do the drive back to Boston in August or whatever.
I think we can both agree I would not want to spend 29 or 39 hours in a car, but I'd rather get on the flight.
If you're actually like making a real road trip of it and spreading that out over like a week, then I think you're fine. But I wouldn't want to do it on any kind of time crunch.
I have never done a road trip, so unless you consider what Scott and I did to Buffalo a road trip, but we only stopped in Albany for beer.
Yeah, that's a day trip. It's not like a full blown.
Yeah, it's not a road trip. We're not like stopping at national parks or anything like that, going to try to pet a buffalo or anything. But all right, Brian, what's the next question?
Okay, let's go to Roger. Roger says, now that the Bruins have to wait until the 23rd spot before they make a first round draft pick, do you think they might draft a prospect with a higher risk and higher reward profile? I ask because I've seen teams try this approach in recent years, including 2 years ago when the Bruins drafted Dean Letourneau, who hadn't played in the CHL or USHL, and last year when Anaheim drafted Roger McQueen, whose health status was uncertain. Can you think of any noteworthy draft prospects who might fall to the late 20s because they're coming off of injuries or have declared for the draft with no CHL or USHL experience? That's Roger asked a couple of questions. Let's start with that one right there.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any kind of direct comparison like that. Like, there's no one in that range that I see that's like Dean Letourneau, where he played at a much lower level, basically a high school level, or I think it was the next year. Was it this past year that Mason West went? In the late first round, straight out of Minnesota high school. There were even right before the draft, like there were questions about whether he was going to pick football or hockey, and he ended up declaring that he was going hockey full time. I don't think there's anyone like that. There's players that are maybe, more of projects or come with more question marks. Like I would look at like a Ryan Rubrek, who's a big 6'4" skilled winger, but there's questions about his work ethic. But it's like he's playing in the OHL. He's been in the OHL for a couple of years, so it's not like there's that unproven. Like we don't even know how that level translates. It's like we know how the OHL translates. So there's players that are more projects, but I don't know that there's not anyone that I see that lines up with like a Dean Letourneau or Mason West.
Yeah, and Scott, I saw there was a few guys that you tweeted about Lynn the other day, correct? Like guys you think that maybe a bit like I honestly think it's kind of like guys you hope fall a few spots, maybe like they're projected either right before you, and then if other people just have different needs or evaluate players differently, then they end up falling to you. I think originally we thought Letourneau might go before Boston, and he fell a few spots and ended up with the Bruins at 25 overall, I believe. So Scott, who do you like in that range that you're hoping maybe drops a little bit?
Yeah, so like the Ryan Lynn tweet was prompted by The Athletic put out their first mock draft, and they had Ryan Lynn going one spot ahead of the Bruins to Pittsburgh at 22. I love Ryan Lynn, so I think like if he drops, like that would be a player worth trading up a few spots for into maybe the high teens. He's 5'11", maybe 6 feet, depending on where you look. Right shot defenseman, very skilled, very good skater, mobile, like that really shifty kind of style. And there's a few of those defensemen in that range, even if Lynn's gone. Like I look at a Tommy Blyle or Xavier Villeneuve, who kind of fit a similar profile. I don't know if the Bruins are looking for players like that. They haven't drafted a defenseman like that in years. Every defenseman they've drafted in recent years has been over 6 feet. They've all been bigger. They haven't been the real offensive defenseman, unless you go back to Mason Lohrei, who is bigger but was also obviously a more offensive profile.
Blanard is an example of a
that's true.
project.
Blanard's more of an offensive guy. Yeah, and he's
Big
like
project.
6'2", 6'3".
Yeah, Matt. Is he going to UMass next year?
Or is not this coming season, the next year. I think he's playing in Sweden this coming year.
Okay. Let's transition into this question from Robbie, who says, can we get the NHLe for like 5-10 guys anticipated to be within the Bruins range at 23? So this kind of goes along with what Scott was just talking about with some players. I'll name a couple too, Scott, that I'm fascinated by, and I don't, maybe depending on the mock draft that you're seeing out there, maybe there's inconsistencies with what I saw, but a couple of players. I'll start with Liam Ruck, okay, who was the second leading scorer in the CHL. He had 104 points in 68 games, and he's projected to go, according to the Tankathon mock draft, 26th overall. He had a NHLe of 37.9. For reference, Gavin McKenna's NHLe on this site, okay, there might be some inconsistencies going depending on what site you're on. Gavin McKenna's NHLe is 39.8, Ivor Stenberg's 37.5. So again, Liam Ruck, 37.9 NHLe, projected 26th overall, let's just call it mid-20s, second leading scorer in the CHL. Now let's go to his brother, which is just as interesting. His twin brother, Marcus Ruck, 39.3 NHLe, first in the CHL in points with 108 in 68 games, projected 35th overall. So he's projected as a second rounder. And again, his NHLe is ever so slightly less than Gavin McKenna's, and actually is higher than Ivor Stenberg. So again, for what that's worth, I don't know, Bridget and Scott, why those two players are projected where they are, but they are in range for the Bruins. And it seems like, according to maybe some of these projections, at least one of them may be available for the Bruins at 23. And if one is, like, am I a fool to look at that NHLe and their production in the CHL and say, hey, why not draft one of these guys at 23?
No, you're not a fool. I think the Ruck twins are two of the most fascinating players in this draft, because not too long ago they were both ranked like well into the second round. It seemed like people in the scouting community weren't huge believers, even though they were putting up these massive point totals for Medicine Hat, which is the team Gavin McKenna was on last year. They lost McKenna. I think I'm blanking, but I think they lost another key player from last year, and they've been really good again this season, in large part because the Ruck twins have just been superstars there. And now you finally start to see some rankings kind of catching up to that or putting them in first round range. Craig Button I think this was like a month ago, so I don't think he's updated them since, but he had Liam 10th overall and Marcus 12th. That is easily the highest I've seen anyone rank either of them. But now you are starting to see kind of like, hey, at least Liam might go in the first round. He's seen as the more projectable of the two to the NHL. He's more of the goal scorer, has a better shot, plays inside. Marcus is the playmaker. He racked up a bajillion assists, many of them setting up Liam. But skating's a question mark for both of them. I'd say that certainly by first round standards, they're both below average skaters. But the production and like the hockey IQ, certainly intriguing. I would absolutely like have them circled as potential targets at 23. Liam especially. Yeah, and I mean the other thing is like how much of that production is because they're twins and they have like basically this thing the Sedins had, like this
Modern day
on ice, like on ice telepathy, where it's like, okay, well, what happens if you only draft one of them? You know, like is he like, it's a legitimate question. It's like, is he still going to be as productive, or like, do you almost want to, you know, try to find a way to get both? Like, I don't think the Bruins are going to be in position to do that because their second round pick isn't until the end of the second round, by which point they're probably both gone. So, yeah, I'm really interested to see like where they go. Does the team that take the first one try to get the second one? Like how this all sorts out.
You're gonna try to see some team try to grab another pick and do the modern day Sedins. You have to imagine like
Calgary has 4 second round picks. Like that's a team where I'm like, they can package those and trade up and get both. Like they're playing kind of, you know, right in their backyard in Western Canada. Like I could see that.
It's only a 29-hour car ride to Dallas is what we found from there.
And,
so that's good for them.
Anybody else in that range with any NHLEs? And again, the question, I want to give more emphasis to the question because the NHLE metric, Scott, it helps. It's a very
and
it's a guarantee, but it's like they're modeling to the best of their ability to see whose skill will translate. So when you have a high NHLE, like it's worth, and that's why the Ruck twins, like theirs were pretty similar to some of the top projected picks. It's like,
yeah,
so what's more important?
It's a very point based model. So you know it looks at production in that league at that age and how that translates over time. And like, yeah, I mean the Ruck twins production measures up extremely well. Like, so I have since 2010, WHL draft eligible players. It's like Marcus Ruck is right behind Seth Jarvis, Leon Draisaitl, and Zach Benson. Then you have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in the middle, and then Leo. It's like, yeah, like that projects pretty well. Obviously, there is more to scouting and drafting and projecting than just looking at point totals, but it does tell you something. There's also like so I pulled up the Tankathon, so I'll just stick to, you know, just the NHLE. That's like a good because there are models now that take NHLE and combine it with some other stuff to spit out like percentage chance that someone becomes an NHL regular or percentage chance someone becomes an NHL star. But for the sake of not complicating this too much, I'll just stick to the raw NHLE. JP Hurlburt is ranked 23rd in Tankathon's like composite rankings, 35.3 NHLE. Another guy put up a ton of points in the WHL, 97 for Kamloops. Nikita Klepov, I've seen mock drafts that have him slipping into the 20s. He led the OHL in scoring at was near the top of the OHL in scoring at 97 points this year, 38.3 NHLE. So like, again, it's going to be the guys who are putting up a lot of points who might slip because teams don't believe in one skill set or another, or they think they're slightly undersized, whatever it might be. But history does tell us like very high level production at the junior level often, not always, but often does translate to NHL production.
how does it, by the way, like we're talking about some of the best forwards right now, but like how does it relate to a defenseman? Because that's potentially the need.
Yeah, it operates similarly. Like it goes off points. Again, it's very point based, and you can say like, well, that doesn't help with defensemen because their job isn't all about scoring. All I would say is that generally most defensemen who make it as regulars or certainly top 4 guys in the NHL, most of them did put up points at lower levels. Like usually it's just like those are the players who are on the ice more, and having some offense at lower levels at least tells you like, all right, this might be a player who can get involved offensively. You just don't see a lot of top 4 defensemen in the NHL who are non-factors offensively. Like most of those guys are relegated to the third pair, and it's like, do you want to take a third pairing guy in the first round? You should probably be shooting for a little more upside than that.
Well, and I think at 23 overall, and I would say at any position really, any draft position, the Bruins should be drafting the best player available, whatever position that is. Not they should be drafting for need. And to Roger's question about the Bruins' willingness to draft higher risk, higher reward type players, I think that absolutely should be what their game plan is. I don't want them drafting the Trent Fredericks or Johnny Beaches of the world anymore. Like we're all set with that, right? So yeah, like swing for the fences, and if you whiff, I'd rather whiff on an opportunity to bring in a true game changer for the future rather than some fringe, bottom 6 forward that there's a dime a dozen in the NHL. Bridget, you wanted to go back to the injuries. I just want to pull it up here from Ben. Ben asked a question. Would like to hear your thoughts on all the injuries that were reported as the Bruins were cleaning out their lockers. We have Arvidsson with a broken rib and punctured lung, Zadorov with his MCL tear, and now Hampus with a broken bone in his foot. At what point does this Monty Python, like it's just a flesh wound nonsense, hurt your team? I get that hockey culture dictates you play regardless, but what if Arvidsson and Zadorov had our big injuries? I get Arby was out, but he was trying to go back and was on the ice. Why not bring in players that are 100% instead of riding players that are only giving you 50% at most? Lohrei literally sat for 3 games while Zadorov had that injury. Why? Why is it with an injury that it seems it's individuals first and earning a pat on the back for look what I did is more important than what is best for the team and winning games?
So I wanted to go back to this because it's an interesting question, and you're like, Ben, you're right. It depends how, like, if we're using a percentage, like if you're not 100%, are you 80%? Are you 60%? Like, and I think Zadorov with a fully torn off the bone MCL was still probably giving you a little bit more than Mason Lohrei. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with that, but they're also extremely different players, and Zadorov is more probably what you needed in those situations. I really don't think he was the problem in those losses at home. And so in that situation, it's like not ideal, right? It's not ideal. He's playing without his MCL, but he was still somehow able to move well enough to be a factor in his position. And the Arvidsson thing, he said he was trending to play in Game 7 if that series had made it to Game 7 against Buffalo. So that was more interesting to me as well, just because he was having breathing issues, but he said it was healing over and that he didn't think he was going to have the breathing issues if he were to come in and play in Game 7. Obviously, it's probably a lot better for him to have that extra time for the ribs and the lung to heal, with the fact that he didn't end up having to play again. But yeah, what do you guys think about guys trying to play through injuries and whether or not it's helpful or hurtful?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating question because it kind of gets, and they mentioned in that question, like it gets at hockey culture in general. And like this comes up every now and then. Usually there's one team or another that kind of has this complaint the end of the playoffs or, certain parts of the fan base about like, well, why was so-and-so still playing if they're so hurt? And I think it's fair because these teams they do look at this, right? Like, it's not as simple as just like, oh, Zadorov says he wants to play. Okay, I guess we're going to put him in. Like, no, like they'll have him on the ice skating, seeing what he can do, seeing how he pivots, how he pushes off, like how he's skating, all that stuff. And then they have to make the determination. Like, they know he's not 100% or even particularly close to it. So then they have to make the determination as to, all right, how effective can he be? How many minutes can he give us? Is he still better than backup option, whoever? And they are trying to make the decision that they think gives them the best chance to win. They're not saying, well, we got to play Zadorov because we want him to be able to show everyone how tough he is. No, they're playing Zadorov because they think playing Zadorov still gives them the best chance to win. So where that line is just an ongoing debate that every team has every postseason, because there are so many guys playing through injuries or at least bumps and bruises that they have to weigh this for. And some guys, you have to step in because they would push through anything and you have to tell them they can't play. So, yeah, it's a really good question and a really interesting debate. But I can tell you, like, teams do have this debate. They're not ignorant to the idea that a legitimately injured player might hurt you more than they can help you. They just have to figure out where that line is.
And even Arvidsson's an example of that, because they didn't just put him in after he punctured his lung and broke his ribs. Like, they didn't put him in yet because he wasn't ready yet. And it wouldn't have been safe for him. It wouldn't have. I've never had a punctured lung, but I can only imagine the breathing issues that would create, especially early on in the recovery. But if he had been rushed faster, I think you would have seen a significantly less effective player.
That's also an injury where, like, you can't push it. Like,
no,
almost like similar to like a concussion where it's like you need your lung to just heal. You can't go play if there's a hole in your lung.
And I'm not gonna lie, I thought the lung recovery would have been longer than what they said it was, because he was going to come back before the end of the series. Like, he wasn't going to miss that much time. So to me, that was shocking. I thought that wouldn't heal quite as fast. I guess it depends on what the extent was.
Yeah, he did say it was a small puncture, so maybe that was a relatively quick healing up.
Yeah, I think it's a case-by-case basis, and it depends who you're talking about. What's the nature of the injury? What's the severity of it, right? If David Pastrnak is dealing with a bum wrist and he's 85%, would you take David Pastrnak at 85% or Alex Steves at 100%, right? Like, you're taking David Pastrnak. So it depends. And also, I speak to hockey culture. I mean, every team has guys that are playing injured. You're going to see, in about a month or so, the Stanley Cup Finals happening between two teams. One of those teams is going to win. Both teams are playing with guys that are hurt. One of the teams is playing with a guy that's hurt, multiple that are going to win the Stanley Cup. And, did it hurt their chances of winning the cup? No, because they won, right? It's every team deals with it. It's the culture of the sport, but it is a case-by-case basis. I do think teams generally, I don't think they're super reckless with their players' health. And I do think that they do ask themselves the questions, to Scott's point and Bridges' point, of like, all right, can this guy go, right? What are we dealing with here? And if they can't, then they won't play. Like, you see guys don't play all the time as well. So
remember back to when it was Tuukka that wasn't 100%? Like, goalie is a different beast as well when you're trying to make that decision. And Tuukka was still playing in those playoffs. And the debate that was going on back then was like, he's the one with more experience, but he doesn't seem like he's 100%. Doesn't seem like, and it was easy to get a second guess after the fact. Like, well, I don't think that was the right choice to ride him the way that they did when it didn't seem like he was fully healthy. So positional the position plays into it, I guess, is what I'll say. And it's like, if you're only 80% as a goalie, that's not going to be good enough. But yet you also have fewer options to go to, because you're like, I rode this guy the whole season. Now we got to throw the backup in. Like, what? That's it. Just like you said, individual basis, positional basis, and sometimes you're just in a tough spot.
All right, Bridget and Scott, what do you guys say we do about 2 or 3 more this episode, and then we'll stash the rest
We
for.
still have like 15.
We have a lot, and as I've said, a lot of these questions, they're all very different from each other, and they're all very well thought out, and so it's it's a fine. I don't want to breeze past any of them just to get them in. I want to make sure we spend enough time on each one. So,
want to do Andy on Twitter, because it's related to Arvidsson. We were just talking about him.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. Andy says, hello, guys. Do you believe this offseason the Bruins can re-sign Victor Arvidsson and make a significant upgrade on their top 6 forward group as well?
Yeah. So I think the idea here is keep Arvidsson and also bring in another top 6 forward to upgrade that group.
Yep.
I would say it would be challenging, but not impossible. I would think in that scenario, probably Casey Middlestad goes out, right? Or maybe Zaka, but more like if we're talking about just trying to upgrade the group, you'd prefer to have Arvidsson and upgrade X, and then if you have to move on from Casey Middlestad, then hey, thanks for the season, good luck. Like, I can see it in that way. So yes, I think they could. It would be very difficult though without moving out salary somewhere, because Arvidsson's probably getting around 6, and then an upgrade. I don't even know, like, probably more likely by trade unless you're ponying up for Alex Tuck. But like that's gonna cost, and it's not gonna be cheap, and you will pretty quickly run out of salary cap space. So yes, they can do it, but you probably have to move out some salary.
Yeah, and it also has to do with like Victor's willingness to resign or want to resign, and that to make sense for both sides. I was on Hockey Hub the other day with Sophia and Adam talking about this, and I was telling them, I was like, I didn't get the best vibe on this situation. Like, sometimes you can tell when there's like a strong like mutual interest, and it just feels like the connection is there, and like there's maybe positive momentum. That is not the vibe I got with this situation. I don't know if Scott, you read it differently, but to me, it just felt like they were both very
I did. Like, we touched on this a little bit, but I do have did feel a better vibe about it. Like, I think they both liked the match, and I think he would like to stay,
yeah,
but
I think they both liked this year. That's out of the question. To me, it's about, are they on the same page for a contract next year in terms of length and the actual amount of it, because they have a little bit of cap space. Yes, they want to add more skill, so that is going to dig into some of that. But if Victor Arvidsson wants to get his last big paycheck, I don't really think the Bruins are in a position to do that with him. So, and Sturm, what originally like set off the little alarms in my head was when Sturm said, but there's stuff that you guys don't know that's going on, or, like kind of alluding to there's other parts of this conversation besides just, we really like this guy and he was a great fit. And it wasn't just an easy, simple answer. Like, he did add that in at the end that made me go, okay, well, I wonder what those things are. And I wonder how far apart they would be on something like term potentially being a deal breaker.
Any rebuttal to that, Scott? Does
no, I think both sides would like to keep this relationship going, but yeah, like, of course, there's a negotiation that has to happen. I wouldn't expect that to just be like, all right, whatever you want to give me, sure, I'm staying. Like, yeah, I think they gotta figure things out and work through it, and maybe they don't get to a point where they can agree. Like, it may very well end up that Victor Arvidsson goes elsewhere for all the reasons you said, because he wants more term, more money, wants to cash in, and the Bruins aren't the team that can do that. But I do think, like, what I want to emphasize is I do think as a starting point, I think both sides would like to continue. Like, I think in a perfect world, the Bruins would like to keep Arvidsson, and in a perfect world, Arvidsson would like to stay because he's been around long enough to know that, like, you don't take good situations for granted, right? Like, he went to Edmonton, he thought it was going to be a good situation. It was not. It didn't work out. I think he's aware that, like, this worked out and this was a good spot for him. And if he had his pick, he stays in Boston and gets the contract he wants. That he might just not be able to get both of those things, which will force him to choose.
Yeah, I'm curious whether Arvidsson resigns in Boston or not. I still feel like that Don Sweeney has to move out some contracts this summer. I'm curious if he can move some contracts before July 1st. Like, are there any draft time trades? Because listen, I don't think the Bruins' priority should be moving one contract just to re-sign Arvidsson and potentially bring another free agent. Their problems go so far beyond Victor Arvidsson and if he's here or not for the next year or two. If they can move out multiple contracts like a Korpisalo, an AC Mont, a Yoki Hart, if they can do those things, all right, fine. But right now you have 2 pending UFAs in Arvidsson and Peak, and 2 pending RFAs in Reichel and Jordan Harris. That's a lot of guys under contract right now. And and right now we're talking about bringing one of them back. And I can tell you that Peak is a guy that they probably want to bring back, but they can't right now because they have Yoki Haru. I think there's going to be some dominoes to move around here before we get to free agency, but we'll see.
And also to just add to Andy's question, I'm going to take it you want to keep Arvidsson and you want an upgrade in the top 6 without maybe taking anything out of the top 6 forward group. And if you wanted to do that, you would have to trade picks, prospects, Lori, in order to not subtract, and that to add back in a top 6 forward. You're looking at dipping in probably to draft capital and potentially Lori as a piece in it, or prospects that you already have in your system.
Realistically, these are some of the names in the Bruins roster that I'm circling because I'm not so sure that they'll be on the team next year, despite their contractual status. Like Jonas Korpisalo, Henry Jokiharju, Mikey Asimont, Mason Lori, Casey Middlestad. Those 5, are they all going to go? Probably not. But that's kind of the group where, realistically, I'm saying, okay, who are some fringe players that the Bruins don't think are long-term and maybe they can move for a draft pick or 2. I think another one is, I don't see them moving this guy because they're very loyal to him, but maybe Sean Corrali's contract, and then there's bigger ones okay, do you trade Zaka but I don't think that's, so those are some names that I'm kind of circling this off season to see, okay, have these guys played their last game as a Bruin and we don't know it yet? But, and if they are able to move some of those guys, I think bringing back an Arvidsson, is way more feasible, right? Because I think we all like Arvidsson here. We like the fit, but you can't have your focus bringing him back if you're hamstrung with all these other contracts. You have to find some flexibility. Just my 2 cents on that. Let's do 2 more quick ones, guys, and we'll get out of here, and we'll save the rest for a rainy day. Let's go to Raymond on YouTube. I kind of want to change things up here. Raymond says, what do we do with the upper management? Don Sweeney signed in 2015, and since then, we've only made it past the second round once, in all caps, multiple exclamation points. So Raymond means business here. Other teams across the league are doing what needs to be done, but Boston continues to blame it all on the players. Bridget and Scott.
I don't know if that part's entirely fair. Blame it all on the players. It's in certain situations, sure. I think why did they no-show in Game 7 in 2019? Like, that's not Don Sweeney's fault. So, yeah, look at the players. Why did they collapse in 2023? Don Sweeney built a team that was capable of winning that series and going on a deep run. In that case, I think you blame the coach just as much as the players, right? Like Jim Montgomery wore quite a bit of what went wrong in that series. But I don't know. I think certainly from the public, Don Sweeney gets plenty of blame. Internally, sure. Could he get more? Yeah, definitely. And, you know, I guess like when you ask like, what do they do with upper management? Well, they made the decision at the 2025 trade deadline to let Don Sweeney at least see the start of this retool through, right? You're not letting him make those kind of massive trades, trading away core pieces, going and getting the picks and prospects, and setting the franchise on a different direction if you're then going to fire him at the end of that season. So you keep him through that. You let him make the coaching hire. They signed him to an extension during that process, in part because I think some of the coaches they interviewed had questions about him going into a lame duck year. And they're like, well, if the GM hiring me is only going to be here one more year, how long am I going to be here? So at like each of those steps, the Bruins have to make a decision as to, all right, are we firing Don Sweeney and someone else has taken this over, or are we giving him a chance to at least oversee the start of this process? And they made the decision to let him oversee this. So that's where they are. And I would say, by the way, like year one, post tearing it down at the 25 deadline, pretty good, right? Like most of those trade returns look pretty good. And the team gets back to the playoffs, has a 100-point season. So now you see where he goes from there. And if they take another step forward next year and somehow add another core piece to this team, then Don Sweeney probably gets to continue to keep his job and see this through. If they take a massive step back and they don't make any meaningful additions and then go miss the playoffs next season, I think Sweeney is very much on the hot seat and could be in danger of losing his job. But there's been kind of like logistical pieces here that have forced them into either committing to a couple more years of Sweeney or firing him. And you can certainly argue if you want that like they made the wrong choice and Don Sweeney doesn't deserve this opportunity to see it through. But once you decide that, okay, he is allowed to make these trades, like you got to give him a little bit of time after that. You can't let him trade away, 3 to 4 core pieces and then be like, okay, now we're going to fire you. It's like, well, wait, why did you just let him decide the course the franchise was going to go on then?
Yeah, and then subsequently handle the draft and drafting your 7th overall pick.
Right.
So I agree with a lot of what you said, Scott. I think that this is a big off season for Sweeney for sure in an opportunity that the Bruins clearly gave him the green light to do a year ago, which is see through this retool, rebuild, and the listener mentions how they haven't gotten through the first round or the second round all but once in Sweeney's tenure, and it's like, okay, that's true. But yeah, I mean, 2023, them not getting through the second round, I mean, Don Sweeney gave that roster everything that they needed to go on a cup run. So that's, the coaches and the players failed that season. But yeah, I also think that from the trade deadline last year, like I love the return for Carlo and Coyle and, obviously the Husnudinov trade, even with like Brazeau, like that's a really good trade.
And Hagens was a
good team, so. Yeah, I mean, I guess props to them for taking what probably was the obvious choice because there were fans who didn't think that they might do that. I feel like Hagens kind of fell to them. But look at the Letourneau. The Letourneau draft pick looks like it's a really good one. So all that stuff is true. I think big picture, I think Bruins fans have a hard time seeing like the old boys club that is Charlie Jacobs and Jeremy Jacobs ultimately at the top, Cam and Don, like they all seem to like to work together too much. Do the Jacobs have the gall to ever one day rid of Cam Neely if it merits it? Does Cam Neely have the cahoons to fire his best friend Don? Will Andy Griffith ever fire Barney Stinson? Like, will that ever happen? I think Bruins fans are fair to be like, I don't see them doing that because they like working with each other too much. But ultimately, it is a cutthroat business. Nothing lasts forever in this business. One day, somehow, some way, I don't think Don Sweeney will be here. But as for right now, I think it's fair to just like, let's see what this next, calendar year brings. And if it's not good enough, then yeah, maybe Andy will tell Barney, hey, buddy, or Barney Fife. Is it Barney Fife? Who's Barney Stinson? Barney Stinson's How I Met Your Mother. Barney Fife.
I was gonna say it didn't sound right. You're getting your TV references.
Getting my Barneys mixed up. Then I don't even know what dinosaur's
very,
last name was.
very timely reference.
Yes.
Purple. Brian, I see. Yeah, really timely. Everybody watches the Andy Griffith show, right? But
I'm an old soul. What do you want me to say? It's if you haven't seen it, it's an absolute hoot.
Brian is, though he's not actually the oldest of the three of us, he's at heart the oldest of the three of us. So
32 going on 82, but yes, thank you very much. All right, let's go to one final question. Bridget, did you have a thought on that? Sorry, you were talking.
Yes, you're old. No, I see which one that you highlighted, and it's about Hagens, but there's actually another one about Hagens that kind of meshes.
Want to lump them?
With what we were just talking about was Ricky on Twitter. And we will get to that, the one that you have highlighted, Brian, next.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
For sure. But
do you want to read Ricky's?
Yeah, sure. Just because this has to do with what we were saying, like letting Sweeney kind of see through the moves that he made, and that includes the pick that he made with James Hagens. And Ricky's question has to do with him. He says, does Hagens, having already played pro games and likely being a full timer in the NHL, make him a better pick at this point than the guys who went ahead of him but haven't touched pro hockey? I know it's too early to say career-wise, but as of now, it feels like the Bees got a steal. Thinking about Desnoyers and Martin specifically, and how if I was a fan of one of those teams, I'd kind of think we took the wrong guy, considering Hagens is already playing pro hockey. Might just be different stages of development. I don't know. I was just curious what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, I had Hagens ranked ahead of both Desnoyers and Brady Martin at the time going into that draft. So I thought that was Brady Martin, I thought, was definitely a reach. Like, he was such a late riser where basically over the course of like the U18 World Championships, he went from outside the top 10 to suddenly going 5th overall. That was probably a bit much. And Nashville and possibly other teams just fell in love with his physicality and his agitating style. I like Brady Martin, and I do think he's going to be a good player. I definitely think Hagens has higher upside. We'll see. We'll see if Hagens gets there, but I would still take Hagens over Brady Martin. Desnoyers, I think, is close. Like, I would go Hagens, but I didn't think that was like an egregious reach to take Desnoyers at 4. He battled a couple injury, or at least one injury this season in Moncton, but put up a ton of points when he did play. So I don't know that Utah's like really feeling bad about that at all. I would still take Hagens over those guys. I'm still more excited about him. I think the Bruins did very well to get him at 7th. Do Utah and Nashville feel like they made mistakes? I don't know. Again, I think Utah's probably still fairly happy with where Desnoyers is trending. Nashville, honestly, the bigger one for those teams is like seeing what Porter Martone did for Philly in the playoffs, where he's already making a massive impact. He went 6th. Like, I would say that's probably the bigger one that they're looking at, going like, damn, like I know he's a wing, not a center, but we should have taken him because he also brings some of that physical, agitating element that we took Brady Martin for, and Martone's bigger. So for Nashville in particular, I think that's the one that's going to sting more, because I do think Porter Martone's probably going to have a much better career than Brady Martin.
Yeah, and wasn't he originally Martone projected higher than 6 originally? So
Yeah.
like he kind of fell, and that's because those teams that took Denway and Martin passed up on him. And maybe they were doing a little bit of overthinking, and maybe they do regret it now, the fact that both Hagens and Martone fell beyond them because they made a different choice. And in terms of like Denway, it was funny because I was going through his year this year, and at the end of this season, he did sign his 3-year entry-level contract with Utah. So he's not going back to juniors. He's not going to college. He's going to be in the pro system next year, whether it's with Utah or in the NHL or the AHL. But he's about to move on to that phase in his career. So maybe he's not that far behind some of those guys, right? Like Hagens makes a jump just at the very end of the regular season and doesn't even get a full complement of playoff games because he ends up a healthy scratch. So it's too soon to say that either of those guys are like definitely worse than Hagens. Totally different development paths with Hagens being in college, and teams just being at different places of need with different players, or needing infusions in different spots in terms of call-ups or what have you. And Hagens was never going to go back for a junior season at BC. So it was time to get him into the pros at that point when BC season ended a little bit earlier than they would have hoped.
Well, and also, and I might be a little bit off on this, but doesn't Brady Martin have more NHL games played to his name than Hagens? Because didn't he get like 7 or 8 to start the year with Nashville?
Yeah.
And then they made a choice on him to go back to junior. So yeah, I mean the Brady Martin thing, like last year, I mean we did enough episodes to preview the draft. Your top 5 were, allegedly supposed to be, Schaefer and Misa and Hagens and Frondell and Martone. And then, you kind of had Denway and Jake O'Brien in like that 6-7 range. And then you had Eklund, I think was kind of up there too. And, some others, but yeah, Martin shot up because everybody thought that on the heels of back-to-back Stanley Cup championships that he was the 18-year-old version of the next Sam Bennett. And maybe he will be, but that's the gamble that Nashville took, and others, because if Nashville took Porter Martone, I wouldn't be surprised if Philly took Brady Martin, because that's the hype that he had heading into that draft class. He was, apparently in his interviews, very charming, kind of like a good old Canadian farm boy that just people just were like, oh, this kid, he gets it. And yeah, I think it's too soon based on what these players have done so far. But everybody, there's always marginal differences in how they enter the league, but they'll all be good players.
I'm also intrigued to see what the pro career of Roger McQueen ends up looking like, because he's somebody who was mentioned in the previous question, had a back injury he was dealing with, question marks with him. I watched him a bunch this year. He was playing in Hockey East at Providence, and he's so he's physically noticeably bigger than a lot of guys. Like, he's a big center. He can make plays. He still has development to do for sure. But when you talk about, he's already signed a pro contract too, so he's not going back to Providence, in case people missed that. But so he's either in the AHL or NHL to start next season. What does his first pro season look like, and what does he look like a few years into it? I'm very interested to find out, because there were a lot of top centers that went in that top 10. That top 10 was very saturated with center prospects, and there were a lot of teams up in that range that needed centers, and they had their choice. The McQueen was on the board for the same, like all of those top 10 picks. He got passed up on because of the questions about health. Like, does he end up being better than some of the guys that were passed up on as well? So just interesting. I'd certainly be keeping a close eye on the guys we've been talking about in their careers.
And with Anaheim with Troy Terry and Leo Carlson, Cutter Gauthier, Beckett Seneca, and Roger McQueen on the horizon, that could be why potentially somebody like a Mason McTavish, maybe there's a lack of a fit for him long term for the Anaheim Ducks, and maybe there's a trade to be there over the summer. If not with the Bruins, somebody else, maybe. We'll see.
One minor point of clarification. Technically, Denway could go back to juniors for another year, but I don't expect that. Like, I think he's probably ready for pros.
Yeah, and even Utah taking him, like Denway was kind of, in terms of the Hagens comparison, Denway was more of like the safe pick, the reliable two-way center iceman. And when you look at Utah's roster,
the Patrice Bergeron comp.
Oh, please. Yeah. The comp everybody likes to say for the young two-way centers. But, Utah already has Logan Cooley, right, as their number one center, who's kind of that, high motor, all skill, center, top center. So, like, I do think Utah kind of drafted for kind of for need there. Like, they're like, all right, we have this profile. Now we want this profile maybe in like our, going forward. That's my take on that too. So teams do draft for need more than I think people realize.
Which I'm
right or wrong. I don't know.
To an extent, like I'm okay with, right? I think we even talked about that at the time. I was like, well, Utah would be one team where maybe they actually don't take Hagens because Hagens and Cooley profile so similarly. Like that I actually thought made sense. But there was like a lot of reporting that Utah loved Porter Martone. And then it seemed like very late that flipped to like, oh, actually they love Denway. That's their guy. And it's like, I do wonder, like, will they regret that? Again, I still like Denway, so we'll see where that goes. But
yeah. All right. That'll do it for this episode. Thank you all very much for all of the questions you submitted. And as Bridget said earlier, we have enough for another couple. So we promise we'll get to your question if you did not hear it today. But we didn't want to take up your time for 4 hours.
Yeah, there was, I think we got like two more overnight that I didn't even put in. And then I saw another one come in while we were recording. So, yeah, I think ultimately this probably ended up being the most we've gotten for a mailbag. Obviously, people had a lot on their minds going into the off season. So glad we did it. Glad everyone sent stuff in. And like we said, like we will get to more of them, probably on Monday's episode.
Yeah, looks like second mailbag part 2 on Monday. So will there be a part 3?
Well, thank you all very much for your questions.
Can you guys, here's the new challenge to everyone. Send us enough to program the entire offseason.
Yes,
all mailbags all the time.
It's going to be a lot of letters by owl to Scott's house.
Yeah. How many Ravens did you get?
I told you, so no Ravens, but I have birds trying to like break in through my dryer vent, and maybe one of them's a carrier pigeon. It's like the the owl scene in Harry Potter where they're trying to get Harry his letter and they just break into the house. Like I think that's happening with mailbag letters.
Well, if you don't let them in, you're never going to get the mailbag questions, and you're never going to find out if you got your letter to Hogwarts. So I think you should let them in.
If I go to Hogwarts, their Quidditch team's gonna lose.
True. Well, wait. They don't just have a. Anyway, we'll let you have it.
All right. Thank you all for your questions. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.